Hi, Sangeet. Welcome to the cast. We're so excited to have you on today's episode and to learn more about your career journey. I'm going to jump right into the first question. Sangeet, we would love to hear more about your story and career development. Let's start from the
Yeah.
very beginning. How did your post-secondary experience lead you to where you are today?
Oh, we're getting right into the meat of it. I basically failed my way into computer science. And the reason is I went to university and my family came from a biology background or we're doctors. So I was like, naturally, this is what I'm going to do as well. So went into university, just wasn't getting good grades. I want to say it was because I didn't have the right system, the support circle, and enough interest in bio to fail all of them. But the reality is I did. I went through biology, neuroscience, accounting, and then finally landed into computer science. And luckily, the TA that I had that was teaching me the fundamentals of computer science taught me something quite interesting that stuck with me till this day and has kept me interested enough to pursue my career into it. The saying was, everything in life is an algorithm, and if you can break it down into the simple building block, you can create whatever you want. And
Wow,
that stuck with me till this day, and I try to follow it and tell everyone else about it as well.
definitely. I love that saying. That's the first time I'm hearing it, and I'm definitely going to take that with me. Thank you for bringing us along on that journey. So I'd love to reflect more on that and ask you, how does that journey differ from your initial expectations? And did you envision this specific career path from a young age, or did your aspirations change along the way?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely differed quite a bit. As a young kid, I always thought I was going to be an athlete, just like everyone else did. And then after that, I was like, okay, if not that, I'm going to be a psychiatrist. Complete polar opposite, but that's what I truly thought I was very interested in. When I switched into computer science, I was like, you know what? I'll be happy if I just got an engineering job, made like 50, 60,000 a year, and I was just happy in my little corner. So
Mhm.
it's changed drastically since then. And even being in engineering, it's changed where now I realize I want to learn different things. And personally, for me, I want to be in the blockchain space, which just means I need to be more flexible and learn and go deeper in the space a lot more. So my aspirations keep changing, but as long as I feel like I'm striving for the next level, I can get there.
Definitely. I think it's important that aspirations are constantly changing. And it's also important to
Mhm.
reflect on the journey behind you and see what your goals were and what you ended up achieving. You've definitely achieved a lot. You've succeeded at multiple companies with Deloitte, RBC Ventures, and Microsoft. So, our next question, I'd love to know what encouraged you or inspired you to move on to the next thing. And how did you move from Deloitte to RBC Ventures? And then ultimately, how were you able to break into Microsoft from RBC?
I guess the very first point was when I switched into computer science, I wasn't fully sure if this was going to be it for me, if this is what my target goal was going to be. But I remember writing this down on a piece of paper. Till this day, it like stays with me, which is I wanted to go deeper into engineering and build tools that will eventually have some sort of utility. Even if five people use it, I would have been more than happy. So that meant I wanted to do three things. I wanted to be able to build, I wanted to be able to sell, and I wanted to be able to scale. And as you'll see in my journey, that's where I've been. So when I first started out, I had a lot of imposter syndrome when I wasn't sure if I was ready for engineering altogether. So I was like, you know what? I'm slightly technical, but I want to be able to pitch to C suite. So that's where consulting came in.
Mhm.
I was at Deloitte. And once I felt like I had enough understanding where now it was all about my reps that needed to go in, I wanted to learn how to scale startups. So when I went to RBC Ventures, I was one of the 10 engineers on the team. And our biggest problem was how do we make sure our services are scalable enough that they'll be useful and won't crash on users? Thereon, I learned that's not my favorite part. And now what I wanted to learn is how do you handle true scale, which is a billion users every single day? And how will you get into the real nitty gritty product development of a product that is fully fleshed out? And that was my journey into big tech. Like that was where I thought I wanted to be. It didn't matter if it was Microsoft, Amazon, Google, anywhere in big tech, but that's where I wanted to be. Now, in terms of breaking into Microsoft, it's going to be a very boring answer, but it's a numbers game. It's you need to put in your work of doing leak code, understanding your algorithm inside out. It's like doing an MCAT or any other standardized test. There's a clear cut way you need to be able to pass and succeed it. So that's irrelevant of whatever happens. And the next is, and I'll put out this fact as well. I mentioned it to a few people early. I've done over 800 applications before I got my 10 interviews with big tech. I still have the Excel sheet with me where I remember applying every single day, knowing as long as I was ready, if I got the interview, I would pass and move on. And yeah, the boring answer is it's a numbers game and you need to put your reps in.
Yeah, definitely. It might be a boring answer to some, but it's definitely important to all of our listeners, especially those that are trying to break into Microsoft themselves one day. So thank you for sharing
Yeah.
all those great points. And now, speaking more on your current role at Microsoft, I know you mentioned on a call with me once that there are energy drainers and energy givers. And so I would love to ask you, Sangeet, what those are for you in your current role and how you manage those tasks accordingly.
I'll do my drains first because they're very evident for me. One is I don't like the standard 9 to 5, even though that's basically what everyone's usually in. So I would say it's continuous work without priority, which is, hey, we need to work 8 hours. Let's just build something. The second is repetitive tasks, which falls in the same format. Once I've solved something, I don't want to have to write it 1,000 times. And the last one, which I'm currently just doing, is test cases, which is making sure the piece of code you build is actually secure enough. Now, these are drains that I know I need to do regardless, but I don't really enjoy it. And I guess my energy gains or givers will be my project style work, which is I don't mind putting in 14 hours in a day if I need to. Whatever piece I'm working on will come to an end and I'll get a little breather. The second is constantly changing my work environment. And I'm notorious for it. I'll like spend one day in the office, 2 days at a cafe, and 2 days at home. As long as I can constantly move around and have a different view, I'm happy. And the last one is, I guess, a bit more technical, but I like to focus on design and architecture. Like that is what brings me true joy. And now, how do I balance them? Because I don't really get to have all of it at all times. Is I try to follow the 70-30 rule, which is as long as I'm doing 70% of the fun work, I can live with 30% boring. So I primarily don't do 9 to 5, and my managers are quite comfortable with it. Sometimes I'll start at 11 or 12 and go on for much later. I try to balance boring work. So if I have test cases, I am not starting at 9 a.m. I will make sure I start at 11 and I'll go on till 8 p.m. Focus on test cases, know that there's lunch coming up and I'll be very happy, and then switch on to programming and trying to do something more creative. Or if I need to actually go to a 9 to 5, I'll make sure I finish my work early so I can work on my personal projects a bit later. So yeah, it's just all about the balance of a 70-30 rule for me.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good rule. And I remember after that call, I really valued the insight that that outlook on work gave me. And I agree with a lot of those points. I think we have some similar energy givers. And I do think it's a really important aspect of working full time to stay motivated and sort of gauge that yourself. So
Mhm.
thank you for answering that question. And I'm going to move on to our last question, Sangeet. And it's a little bit of a tough one. But if given the opportunity, what's something that you feel you would have done differently in your career path? What advice do you wish someone had given to you at your age?
I'll start with the advice because I think it's a bit easier. I'll break it into three. You can choose which one we want to dive deeper into or all of them. But one is I wish someone told me to focus on competency and the three main pillars around it. And the pillars would be how do you really learn? How do you get past a 15% threshold? And how do you build on top of it? So I wish someone told me that. Like that would have been amazing. I think what I would have done differently, slash what I would still also tell other people to do, is to fail really fast. And I think I'm envious of people who are much younger than me because you have a lot more time to fail and it makes things easier. So I think I would have not taken 4 years to go through three different majors. I would have liked to do them within 2 years, taking a lot more electives without really it mattering, but being like, I'm curious, I want to do it. I hate it, I'm moving on. And just the mindset would have helped me a lot more. I still think I would have ended up in a very similar field because this was a very open-ended career for me. So yeah, if you want, we can dive deeper into failing faster or the pillars, whatever you like.
I would say I'm interested to hear more about failing faster.
All right. I've given this quite a bit of thought. So I'm pumped. We're taught at a very, very young age that grades equals appreciation. So basically, a school puts a huge emphasis on passing, on getting good grades. Parents for not, and I'm not trying to offend any parents, but for not having a style of knowing better, it's if you pass or get trophies, we love you more. If you fail, there's a punishment associated to it. But the reality is, if you're doing something new and you're doing something hard, the expectation is you're going to fail a lot more than you're going to succeed. Because the moment you succeed, you can move on to the next thing. So I think that's a part where our society or even like our school system and our incentives are set around that just it discourages people to take more risk, especially when you're in like high school or university. You have so much opportunity to fail. And the biggest fear is, who are you going to disappoint? It's never you because you know that you'll be okay. It's, am I going to disappoint my peers or my parents or people I look up to? But that's okay because there's going to be thousands of you. When you hold someone accountable, you put a pressure on yourself that if I fail, they'll judge me for it. And trust me, it's okay because a good mentor will understand that failing is just a part of the journey. So yeah, failing faster would have just been step zero, accept and internalize it.
Yeah, definitely. It's really interesting to hear that advice. I feel like it applies to me and also a lot of our listeners, just to take risks and fail while there's less on the line. So I definitely agree with that. And that concludes our last question. I know that one was sort of a difficult one, but I do really think that that's personally my favorite one to ask. I think our listeners benefit a lot from that. What you would have told yourself is possibly what is helping them in the future as well. So thank you. I'm sure our listeners will really benefit from all the insight that you've shared. And it was truly a pleasure to ask all these questions to you, Sangeet.
The pleasure's all mine.